February 6th, 2020. Just to notice that, are we being televised tonight?
We are, apparently.
We are being televised and recorded. And pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Bruce and Dennis, in order to shorten your length of time here, do you guys want to speak first on the DPW building?
Sure.
Yeah. If that's okay with the committee going out of order?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Does any of the board members have any questions regarding the new building? To start out with that.
Yeah, you sure you need one?
At our last meeting, well, back up even further than that. At our first meeting of this new committee,
Don't like me?
it was our intent to take the Collins report as a template in order to fulfill the requirements outlined by the article that was passed in 2015, I believe. So we take that as a template. That template had the DPW building as the #1 priority based on the matrix. And it was the consensus of this committee that would stay consistent to that, and that the question was then, what is needed next, because the scope has changed from a brick building to now a steel building. And essentially, I think what we came down to was a new feasibility study would be needed.
Okay, so, Dennis and I kind of discussed this after work today. So, I guess, I've never really been involved in building a large building before, so, I can speak to need. I guess when I hear the word feasibility study, I guess I'm looking for a definition of what a feasibility study is, because in my mind, and I think in a lot of residents' mind, I look at it as, feasible. Do you need one? Is it feasible to build one? Need and feasibility of it. That's what I think of when I hear that. And the way we look at it, we've already done all this, 12, 15 years ago. We've gone through all the steps. We've had site work done. I don't think there's any question in anybody's mind. We've had open houses. We've had videos on cable that we need a building. I think, especially the front building, we've come to determine that, we need to tear down the front building that was built in the late 40s and has a 1970s addition on it. And at this point, leave the back building for cold storage. Employee facilities, maintenance facilities are most important right now. Get into, codes and everything like that as far as bathrooms and everything. It's just, it's, I think the need is not the question anymore. So Frank's been involved over the years, and Bob, especially as far as we've had different estimates, different looks at different buildings, and we've pared it down from, very expensive to, now we're hoping to do a building, and I hate to even throw out numbers, but we know we got an idea of how much a foundation would cost and what size the foundation would be approximately. So we think we're looking at a building somewhere, when all said and done, is between 3.5 and 5.5. And again, that's a big spread. But I see some towns out there are building similar type buildings what we need for in that range. It's a big difference from when we first presented. What was the first numbers we presented, Frank? Close to
It was
12?
11 million, and we rolled it back to 9.
Right.
We got a huge support at the town meeting, and it went down in flames at the ballot box.
Right. So the way we look at it at the DPW is the legwork's been done. The need is unquestionable. So where do we go from here? Are we ready? And I've never been involved in building a building before, but I think we're ready to have somebody come in and design a building, get an engineer to design a building, and say, this is what you need, and this is how much it's gonna cost to build it, and then present it at town meeting. Now, I don't know
That's
how
your
we get there.
feasibility study.
That's the feasibility.
Basically, the study we did in 2009 is not going to help us because it's 11 years old. So what would happen is, with funding from town meeting in May, we would seek bids for a feasibility study, which would once again look at the site, make an evaluate what the needs for the DPW are at that site. It's not only the ground and the buildings, but how it's equipped, what your expectations are, what your demands are for service, because that's all part of what they ultimately design. And Bob, if you want to jump in there.
What is the cost to the feasibility study? Is it, can we do a percentage of the project? So we're going to spend a couple of $100,000 to,
I shouldn't think so.
if we spend that much money to come up with somebody to tell us what we need, I think we already
No,
know.
we're going to get basically what we got the first time around. An estimate of the cost to build, an estimate.
So our last meeting, we decided we were going to reach out to Jeff Alberti.
And we did, and I'm still waiting to hear from him.
So
I have spoken to him.
Yeah, so I think we're going to try to go with a design bid process so that I don't know if we still need a feasibility study for that, or if what we've already done may help,
Well,
but I think he can help us with it.
I guess if the first question you want to ask yourself is, how do you present this to town meeting without a study showing you all of the specific things that go into planning and building this building? What are our needs?
So if we do a feasibility study, we come up with something that is what we feel is feasible as a committee, we present that.
No, my guess is it's going to cost somewhere between $25,000 and $40,000 to hire a firm to do a full analysis of the site, of what the DPW does, what the public requires, and how we meet it, and what kind of building we build to do that. The feasibility prepares us to present to the public to get the support we need to actually build the building. Typically, when you go into a feasibility study, if you pick the right group, you can transition
Right through the
from study to building. It's a mistake we made at the police station.
So I think that maybe what we should do is reach out to Wesson and Sampson, maybe Jeff's not long.
We have, Bob. We're waiting for a response.
We're
I've
waiting for
spoken
Jeff.
to him.
Oh, you have?
I've spoken to him.
Okay, so he's still employed there.
Yeah, he's telling me that we can expect that it's going to likely be at least $6 million.
Over what it was? Over what it was, or?
No, $6 million.
Oh, okay.
We had been hoping for a $4 million building. He said he's collecting all of the information for the buildings that have been done for the last 2 years. I told him we're looking at a 100 by 200. You know what the cost per foot is. You have to build and equip. We're going to spend well over $1 million in site work, probably.
I don't disagree with that.
And of course, we have the other costs. We have an OPM, we have a designer, and we have a contract.
So is he willing to work with us on a design-build basis if we get a feasibility study done and sell the project to town meeting?
It's still not design build.
Right.
Steel buildings are not eligible for design build.
So I guess, just to echo kind of what you were saying earlier is right. So the size at 100 feet, 200 feet, is that?
not etched in stone. We initially had talked about that size. We've kind of laid it out in, in the footprint of the old building out front where that would lay. I think
15,000 square feet would work.
I think we talked
Would be
about
enough,
doing
and
150 by 100.
And that's the other thing you do with the feasibility study, you do the what-ifs.
Right.
Yeah, I think the 20,000 square feet is a little bit, it's gone way up in price. I think that's going to be out of our budget.
And that's probably what you need, but what we need has to be tempered by what we can accomplish. This would not be a difficult building to fund over a period of time. I would guess that maybe half of that is going to be covered out of sewer and water. There's a good chance that some significant money will be put up front from our reserves to reduce how much we have to borrow. I'm thinking maybe $1.5–2 million.
So the question is there anything we can do to kind of fast track this to get something ready for town meeting? Or do we want to put it out to the finance committee and see what,
I think until you get the funds to do the study, you're dead in the water.
Do we have a quote to do the study?
No, we have to bid it. We have to first,
Do we have an estimate?
you can't do that. You have to first get an approval for funds and then publish your request for proposals.
How do you do that when you don't even know what you're asking for?
You do informal research. It's the bidding process that we're bound to under law. You can't bid a job without funding to pay for the,
we've been through this whole
Sure.
process already.
Okay.
And what came out of that was a DPW facility, which was $11 million.
We can't even put out on the street at people to bid on giving us a feasibility study without going to town meeting to fund it first? Is that what I'm hearing?
yes, because
You
you
accept
have
it.
to have the funding
So
to
the best
accept
we
the
can-
bid.
Okay. But,
I know it's convoluted.
yeah,
And
it's different
I
from the
know to
private
the
sector.
average person, it makes no sense
Right.
that we're going to go out, get an appropriation, so everyone who wants to find out can know exactly how much money we have to spend, because we have to vote it first. And as insane as it is, that's the public bidding laws.
And that's why I think people think, well, a lot of the stuff in the government moves a lot slower. And they're right, it does. And that's because of obviously the requirements that we have to, abide by.
So let me just throw it out there. So we try to appropriate 25,000 is the number you're throwing out there. And all the estimates to do a feasibility study come back at 40,000.
Well, this
We'll get
is why we
before
reach
go to
out.
town meeting.
We reach out and talk to people.
So you
And
get
we
an
try to get an idea of what we're going to need.
So you get an informal estimate.
Yep.
That's what happened before. I mean, they did what you probably did
That's kinda what I'm asking
site
for.
about.
Do we have any estimates now?
I think they did site
feasibility-
visits before. You did site visits on a couple of the different places to see what was out there, what was required, and
We had guys that owned construction companies that built these buildings here who met with us.
And can't do it.
And can't do
and
it?
They can't do it
no,
for
they
us.
can't do it. So what we'll do is we'll get an estimate.
They're not
we want.
certified by DCAM, and they don't, we can't do a design build on it anyway, but
Right, so we now know what we want and where we want it. We're gonna give them two different scenarios. One is 15,000 square feet and one is 20,000. They'll determine whether or not 15,000 is enough space for the DPW needs, but basically, we've got a lot of information that they have to explore already done, so the bid should be a whole lot less expensive with the information we already have. And
You know-
Jeff Alberti, if his company will help us, I think he's gonna look at all this information.
and they will. It's Weston and Sampson, and they're premier players in the market. One of the problems we have right now is that we've been carrying this $4 million number, expecting that we could go out there, buy a building, have it put up. And the discussion I had with Jeff 2 weeks ago was somewhat sobering to listen to him. I also saw him at the MMA conference when he told me he's working on the numbers. I'm disappointed because he told me I'd probably have him Monday or Tuesday. This is Thursday. However, we're not paying him to do anything.
Right.
So it's not like I can get on the phone and say, where the heck are these numbers? Why don't I have them? I did remind him, subtly, of course.
But the estimated cost already went up by $2 million, and that's been, what, 8
Well,
years,
we've
9
never
years?
had an estimate
had
for
an
4
estimate.
million. That was something that we came up with
Right.
after looking at some things that were done in other communities. So we have never had
An official estimate?
an estimate that it would be $4 million to build a building. What did we look at? Hingham? Who was the 4 million? It doesn't matter.
Was that Hingham?
I thought it might have been Hingham.
And they did a larger facility
Yeah.
with administration, et cetera. I mean, we didn't know some things that we know now. We know what kind of foundation we need now. Before, I don't even know if we knew exactly what kind of foundation we needed when we got to $12 million. Yes.
We would have set ourselves up for a huge overrun, and we.
Yeah, actually, when we received the proposal for the 11 million, there was a huge contingency in there
Because of.
for the
unknown.
site work. We tightened it up, we reduced the size of the building, we reduced the construction material, got it down to 9 million, but we still had a question mark
On-site work.
on site work. And we had a decent contingency for it. It didn't matter. They loved it at town meeting and they said no at the ballot box. So what we have that we didn't have before is the makings of a long-term plan that will show people how we can afford to do this. And that's a big part of the process. What we have to be able to do, when we go to that town meeting, there's going to be somebody sitting in there who's a design engineer, who's going to have 50 different questions that we're not going to be prepared to answer if we don't have a professional analysis of what it takes and what has to be incorporated in it, also following Chapter 149.
And to answer your question earlier, Bruce, is that at our last meeting or the meeting prior to that, it was the consensus of this committee to really, if we're staying consistent with the Collins report, and if it's the will of this committee to recommend a DPW building to town meeting, to hash out all the issues up front and make it as clear, as concise for the town to make an informed decision. And if even before that, if the DPW made sense, obviously we'd take a vote on it and bring that to DPW and make that as part of the argument. But we're trying to avoid all the issues up front, have all that information, get all the ducks in the row. That way, when town meeting comes up, questions are answered, and it's the will of the people at that point.
So if we present a number at town meeting to fund a feasibility study that would take place sometime after July 1st, I just think at town meeting, whatever that number is, when that,
Doesn't have to be July 1st, depends on how we fund it.
right.
Put it special.
Right. But when that article comes up, I think, whether it's myself or Frank, because somebody needs to get up and really explain what a feasibility study is, because so many people out there, myself included, over the years, before I was involved, just roll their eyes. They hear feasibility, oh, they're gonna spend 50 grand on a feasibility study, and they hear that so often, I think they just start to roll their eyes and don't understand exactly what it means.
One of the things that people don't understand about municipal projects or state projects or federal projects, all of those people know, all of the players know, that it starts with an appropriation. If you don't have an appropriation, you're not going to get any bids.
Right.
No one is going to waste the time to bid on the job knowing that no money has been provided. And that's a frustrating way to do things, but it's the world we live in. Hell, I can't even call and get a quote to repair a wall anymore, because most people know we have to get 3 quotes before we can start on the work. And if it's over 50,000, we need sealed bids. And they don't want to knock themselves out if they don't think they have a real good shot at getting the job.
Just spinning the wheels, providing you paperwork.
I mean, I would be depressed if I had to make all the calls Bob makes for those things.
I've had fence companies tell me to, yeah, don't ever call me back.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing to do. Whenever we've been able to estimate within reason what we need, I bypassed the process, got the appropriation, then we had the money, we went out, we got 3 quotes, and the low guy got it. Lowest responsive bidder got it.
So, I'm sorry. So one last thing on the feasibility. Are you prepared to be able to communicate to whoever that prepares the feasibility study all the amenities that are needed in that building?
Yeah, I believe so, and I believe especially for working with firms that's, Weston and Sampson, there's several other firms out there that we've talked to that have built several public works buildings throughout the state, and they know what we need, maybe beyond what we think we need. And we've visited some other new facilities, we see what they have, we see what's, a luxury, and we see what is, the minimum what you need, There's some things we see out there is like, that's really nice, but it's an extra, can we do with that? We could do without that. Various things in the maintenance garage. But basic things like vehicle lifts, air exchanges, we have none of that. Our air exchanges, we blew a hole in the back wall and took a fan and mounted it into that and flip it on. We have the trucks running inside or some kind of motors. Things like that. The mechanics are constantly laying on their backs on a wet cement floor. Today they were putting in an oil pan. It's just been like that since I've been there over 25 years, and it's the industry standard is most private garages blow hours away.
Right.
So as far as need, we pretty much know what we need inside the garage, and we just professional the mechanics of it all, whether it's the compressor rooms and things like that, where the professionals come in and tell us how to lay that all out. I'd like to extend, I know a lot of this board has been down there, but anybody who hasn't been to the DPW garage on this board or anybody watching, we're welcome to take you through a walkthrough, see what we have down there. And, we've done it before with minimum turnout, but anytime Dennis and I will walk you through.
So Frank, is it within the authority of this committee to recommend warrant articles to the Board of
Yes.
Selectmen? Okay. So I guess I would entertain a motion to recommend.
Motion to seek an article on the town meeting warrant to fund a feasibility study for the construction of a new DPW building.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
I thought I did.
Any further discussion?
You just repeated what we needed to
We
get
need to
done.
have an amount on that, not to exceed?
Well, the motion is to put it on the warrant. Now we're going to do some legwork
Right.
to figure out before the warrant gets posted how much money we think we need. I don't think we want to set a number right now because when I say between 25 and 40,000, it's a guess based on
You gotta make some
what
phone
I've seen
calls.
out there, but
We
I
got
need
it.
to.
Yeah, we got it.
And I'm really depending, Jeff Alberti, I'm sure he's busy, and I'm sure that's the reason we don't have it yet. This guy has been phenomenal in supporting our efforts, and I actually apologized to him when I saw him in Boston, saying, look, I'm sorry to do all this work, and his comment to me was, I've worked with people 15 years before they put a program together. I'm willing to help. And certainly, they're a firm that, as I said before, has a real reputation in this type of construction. You'll probably find that they're one of the preeminent players out there. And they also understand that they work with a variety of budgets. So
You do?
hopefully that will help us. So,
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
it's unanimous.
All right. Thanks, Bruce, thanks, Dennis.
Well,
Got
appreciate
a
your
water
board
main
support.
project too.
Oh, we have a water main project? Dennis, you want to speak on the water main project?
You mean the sewer force main project?
Yes, sir.
So, a couple years back,
You don't mind if you want to just step up to one of the, at least to the chair.
Sit here,
That
then.
that microphone will get you.
There you go, that'll get you.
the force main has been repaired twice during breaks. One time it was just over $750,000. That was the last time. They had to, occurred on Alger Street. They had to remove a section of water main in Brockton because it was collapsing on top of the blowout. And before that, there was another one a year and 1 week earlier than before that was just over $500,000. Since then, the town has appropriated the money, and they did test borings, cleared the easements and did test borings, and found a lot of corrosive soils, places that could be hot spots, or the engineering firm is recommending, based on the fact of the corrosiveness, the fact that the two pipe failures are basically were corrosion from the outside in, that the force main be replaced. They're currently, the town is negotiating with them a contract to do a design and permitting. This being in wetlands and through Brockton, it's going to end up going just about in front of all the letters you can think of, the EPA, the DEP, the Army Corps of Engineers.
And those were the funds approved at the last special town meeting.
That's correct.
Correct.
Yeah. So that part of that's been done. So now the next is to hire them to do the design and permitting, and then once we get there, I believe at 25%, they can start to come up with a price that we'll have to appropriate to replace it. The least expensive is to just replace the existing line parallel to the with a new one. Then costs go up from there if you want to. The next higher price one would be to replace it and then repair the existing line to have a redundant line. And then of course, the most expensive of all would be to make them be able to cross over. I don't really see the need of that. That's kind of like the Cadillac. So that's pretty much where we're at now. Once the design and permitting is at least at 25%, then we'll be able to come up with a better number on what it's going to cost to replace the main.
Okay. And then once that number comes up, is that something that is that a monies that are going to be requested at town meeting at some town meeting?
Yes. Yeah, and it would come out of water and sewer.
Okay.
So I'm Frank could probably do better. It would be a bond.
Yeah, what'll happen is the town will vote to authorize debt. And right now, the number that's bouncing around there is $8 million. And once that is approved, the big project starts with the contracts, the bidding, it's funded incrementally. We draw bands until we've completed the project. Once it's complete, which I guess is probably a year to a year and a half,
I would say yes.
we then actually bond the money. The bond will be supported by sewer and water revenues. And this is not a tax burden expense. we're asking people to reach in their left pocket instead of their right.
Is that 8 million, is that for option 1, 2, or 3?
Option one.
Just option 1?
Yeah.
So just to give us a new line,
And that
abandon the old line in place?
Well, it's 5.5 miles of line
Yeah. No,
through
I
some
saw-
really tough places.
You sent me the report.
Yeah,
I saw it, yeah.
it's pretty impressive what they did.
I would venture to say that number's going to go up. That was basically considering just the parallel replacement. There was no money for abandoning the existing line. I'm sure that, and there's unknowns as far as that goes, is what will the DEP require to abandon the line? They're not just going to let us just walk away from it. I mean,
Right.
they're going to want it plugged. There's manholes that have to be collapsed. Or, if we're going to eventually plan on using it as a redundant line, how do we mothball it until we can repair it?
Blow it through with hot water and line it.
So just as a reference, the Collins report included this as another one of the highest ranked projects. They figured 8.3 million for 20 years, bonded for 20 years.
Can't do it without it.
So it's corroding from the outside in. Is there any sort of epoxy or anything that can be put on the outside of the line that
Well-
might stop the corrosion and make it safe enough to use as a redundant, God forbid, backup?
If while it was not being used, we could reline it. We could line it from the inside.
Okay.
Okay, is what is my understanding is what could happen. It's at the time it was installed, ductile iron was the material to use, and nobody it had an expected lifetime between 35 and 50. It's going to be 38. The current material would be HDTP pipe and is composite plastic.
What's the life cycle of that?
To be honest with you, I am really not sure. I do know that the corrosion will not affect it at all.
Gas companies figure 100 years for plastic pipe, roughly. HDPE, same stuff.
Maybe we can borrow some of their lines.
There's a few sitting up on Route 18 on the Abington line that I won't let them put in the ground, so.
The other one delaying that project?
No, there's a lot of things delaying that project.
We are in the process of completing, or at least accomplishing, the permitting through the DEP and Brockton. We have dueling lawyers right now working on the contract, so hopefully we'll have that solved within a couple of days. I'd really like to have some sense of numbers by the time we go to town meeting, even if we're not ready to go to ask for the debt exclusion at that time. We'll be able to present the information that we can follow through in a subsequent meeting. There was some discussion about perhaps doing our capital appropriations in the fall. There's some good arguments for that, and there's some reasons why we should trudge ahead right now and get it done for May. So we're working for May, but that is a possibility that we may have to look at, depending on how everything else comes together. But clearly, this is time sensitive.
Yes.
Should we put a placeholder on there that can always be passed over?
Well, the warrant opens next Tuesday, closes at the end of the month. At that point, there will be an article on it. The question is what it will say.
Are we at risk at fines with leakage?
We're always at risk for it if they feel that we're not moving toward getting it done? Yes. They've been pretty understanding so far.
We've been very fortunate for the locations of the past leaks, breaks. They were in fairly rural, there was no businesses around, no houses, but if it breaks, if the pipe was to break in other places like, there's sections of it that are close to Massasoit College, there are sections of it that are close to junkyards on Thatcher Street. Brockton has a water main over there too. So the scenarios for disasters are unlimited.
Yeah, we had good bad luck. It broke in the woods. We had to dig our way in just to get to it.
It was right there by the.
That's another piece of this project too. There is a easement, a right-of-way, to lay and maintain these pipes, and we really didn't have a maintenance approach to keeping that right-of-way. So a big part of this job was getting in there. I mean, you could probably speak to what was involved.
The whole previous article, and the majority of the article was the cost of getting the easement, all the brush and wood cut down and getting it cleared out to get back there. Essentially, it was allowed to grow, and that was what the thinking was at that time, was that to leave things back the way they were. There was never any intention, because when the town built this main to begin with, they built roads to get in there, and then they removed them and on their way out when it was done.
And actually, there was some people in Brockton who were thinking that we should replace the vegetation on those lines.
Actually, the first time the clearing project was bid, the conditions that the Brockton Conservation Commission placed on it made it excessively expensive, to the point where it was way beyond, all the bids came in way beyond what was originally allowed and what was appropriated to do the work.
Are we going to run into those same type of hurdles?
Hope not.
Does the 8 million include anything contingency for those type
Well,
of issues?
the 8.3 million is a soft number right now. When they're done with what they're doing, we're going to have I would think, a more reasoned and supportable number. Yes, no.
Right. That's the whole point of doing getting them.
Why they're doing what they're doing now.
The design and permit.
How we're permitted to do things affects the cost. I mean, there's certain, if conditions are such that it creates additional burden, then that's going to be reflected in the cost of clearing and laying the pipe and what we have to do when we're done. So hopefully we'll have some indication of that by the time we go to town meeting. There'll be an article on town meeting warrant to move forward. It'll probably be a debt authorization. And if we have the numbers, we'll vote it. If we don't, we're back to the drawing board. The only plus side to this is it does not require a debt exclusion, because it's straight borrowing. So the approval authority is town meeting, not the ballot box. That just means we're going to have more people showing up.
Any further questions?
Just, well, real quick, between those two projects, it looks like the enterprise fund could be funding, $800,000 to $900,000 a year on the bonds for the facility and the project. Are the commissioners aware and prepared to adjust the rates accordingly?
They're not very enthusiastic about raising the rates. They want to wait and basically see see a breakdown, how it's all going to. They'd like to hear a price, a better price out of on the force main, and also what the building entails. The DPW's been looking at a building for probably 15 years now, and it's kind of like trying to find a unicorn. Kind of, they'll believe it when they see it. But, and there's also, we are, with the more meters we put in, the more we should see an increase of revenues from them. One thing that is going down is development. There's not a lot left to develop. So fees, connection,
Thank you.
system development fees and connection fees are going to dwindle.
That actually brings up a good point. So if it, is it my understanding that if there were ever a shortfall in sewer and water earnings, that they would then assess the town of Whitman for whatever shortfall there is?
Any shortfall in an enterprise fund has to be recaptured on the recap sheet, so yes. If they had no reserve and if their spending exceeded their revenue, the difference would have to be made up by taxation.
So is it the thought of this committee that that issue should be maybe resolved if we were to make a vote on recommending that article?
Well,
Any comment?
Any vote that the town takes to authorize that debt is taken with the understanding that the revenue
Is there.
has to be raised to service that debt. If it's an enterprise debt, then the revenue generated in the enterprise must be sufficient to service that debt. Every year, when we go to set our tax rate, or when we close the fiscal year, we prepare summaries and we prepare information that we send into the Department of Revenue. And one of the things they focus on are any enterprise funds to ensure that what we've demonstrated in our rates supports the revenue assumption we've made. I have had the distinct displeasure of having to deal with the DOR when the estimated revenues were wrong. And the end result was I had to ask the DPW to call for a rate meeting and vote to change the rates, and that's what would have to happen. You can have it, but you have to pay for it.
All right. Any further questions for Bruce or Dennis? No? All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, can we jump into the town administrator's report? I have a prior commitment that I have to go to very shortly.
Absolutely.
In your packets,
See, Dennis?
you will find
Thank you, guys.
a collection of documents that relate to the capital plan. I asked the town accountant yesterday to put these numbers together in a visible, viewable way. And what we have attached now is a summary headed FY21 revenue summary.
I think I have that.
It should be part of your paper-clipped unit. Should be. Yeah, you didn't take that whole set.
Yeah, two of these.
I thought I gave you one. Okay. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
You've got a guide?
So
Manual.
there are some numbers here to help us identify, and I should mention that Mr. Galvin, who's sitting in the back here, has spent an inordinate amount of time working on those numbers. But what I asked is, what's available from all of our various sources of revenue? So what you have is a breakdown showing levy and then showing cherry sheets, local receipts. And the local receipts have some changes in the heading that says estimate receipts and other sources. So when you put all this together, it tells us there's $39,800,000 that is available. I'm not sure I can accept that number right now, because one of the items in the other available funds is Green Communities, $335,000. That would imply that we have additional grant money that we have not committed, and I'm not aware of any. The accountant indicated that there was an estimate in the Collins Center that we would have $335,000 for other
There
projects.
was, I don't remember what that was. It
And I don't really know what that's coming from,
was school
because
stuff, but yeah.
it isn't something that hits our revenue sheets. So we're going to be working on this next week. But it's a start. It gives us an idea of where we're going. The next page has an analysis of local receipts. Now, what's changed in this process is that we are now identifying local receipts that previously have been reserved funds, specifically the ambulance fund, the reserve for appropriation ambulance account, the reserve for appropriation motor vehicle account, the indirect costs assessed to the enterprise, and I'm missing something. What am I missing?
Solid waste.
Well, those numbers have a significant impact on what's available for capital and for revenue. It's not just capital. And that's also a change in our thought process, because the ambulance fund was primarily reserved for capital. This change makes that money available for all appropriations. What we now have to do is we have to present a budget that includes our capital and debt payments in the levy, because that's what we live by. So this is informational in nature. The next page shows the recurring articles that we currently have, 4 or 4 in one case, 6 or 7 in another. And all of those are going to be treated now as part of the levy process using those local receipts and revenue. Then new articles, and these are not necessarily in our hands right now as articles, but they're proposed spending. And there's some significant money there. So this is going to be our kickoff point for analyzing what we're going to recommend starting this year from the capital perspective. So what we still have to do is fine tune that and reprioritize. One of the things that isn't in here are some requests that the fire chief has made relative to repairs to his building and equipment. I have asked him to submit that to this committee as capital requests to be reviewed and prioritized. He did send an email, I think Wednesday afternoon, with that information. I haven't had the opportunity to add it to the agenda for this meeting, but certainly we'll be looking at it at our next one.
I've reached out to him twice this week, we just haven't been able to connect, so.
I did ask Bob Curran, our building commissioner, to look at those requests from a need and cost perspective. So we'd like to have that before we bring it forward.
Most of the changes are OSHA requirements, but the hose tower, they want to actually finish the floor in there and make it storage space, and then the upstairs part of it, they want to make part of an office.
One of the things that I want to caution that I want to caution people about citing in projects is the advent of OSHA. Prior to this year, municipalities were not subject to OSHA regulations. Technically, we're still not. We are through the state. The state has chosen to apply OSHA standards to us. The end result of that is I've heard nothing but if OSHA sees this, it's done. I do not believe we have anyone anywhere working in an unsafe environment, which is part of what OSHA is all about. There are improvements that are needed, but the fact that OSHA is invoked shouldn't have a disproportionate impact on how you look at it. I've seen too much of it. I've seen it in 3 different departments so far. We're going to do what's right. We're going to do what's necessary. And we'll do it, hopefully, in the priority order that it needs to be done in. And that's going to be a burden for us because we're going to have to figure that out. But certainly, we want to do what's necessary and what's responsible. So the OSHA tag's a little sensitive to me. And we have somebody who works with OSHA regularly here.
Pretty regularly. Yep.
Frank, one quick question. Motor vehicle excise tax, why has it gone down 200,000?
You plan on
I
buying
dropped
new
the
cars?
car.
Huh?
You plan on
Got
buying
rid
new
of a
cars?
car.
There was a reduction last year, and the recommendation of the consultant was to stop estimating at 99 to 100% of last year's numbers, because it leaves no room for
So this is
variance.
just an estimate of excise?
These are always estimates.
The estimates are all at 85% of what we
Yeah,
expect.
well, it says 97.
And the estimates,
That's what it had been in the past.
you know, frankly,
88.
we're still working on this year's estimates. They're still estimates.
Yeah.
They're not going to be numbers until September. By the time we get our estimate, our actuals for the year, we've already budgeted for the next year. So we're always guessing. And we're estimating using best available information, but they're still estimates. With the addition of the 500,000 plus from the enterprise and the 970,000 plus from the ambulance fund and the 45,000 plus from the
Fine.
motor vehicle fine account, it seemed time to readjust our perspective. Will that change? It may. We may find that things are so tight that we have to entertain a little more risk and go a little higher on the estimates. But estimating at 95 or more % of your previous documented expenses is playing Russian roulette. So fortunately, that's going to be a FinCom problem.
Ken actually did a great study below, if you look below.
Yeah, he did.
He evaluated a bunch of other towns and what they were doing, and came up with an average of about 90% of what other towns are doing. So it's great work by Ken to kind of look out and see what
I apologize, I have to step out.
No, that was perfect. Thank you, Frank. So, a lot of what Frank just threw a lot of information at us, which overlaps some of the information that I was going to present. One is that if we stay on that document that he's referring to, is that the recommendations of the Madden report. Essentially what that comes down to, if you haven't been following, is that by implementing these recommendations, that allows for money that wasn't necessarily within the levy to now be in the levy and to be utilized more accurately, I guess is probably the best word to use there. So, so essentially what that does, why that's important for our committee is that this now allows for monies not used that drops to free cash then to be used for capital projects. By implementing the recommendations, that makes the estimations that go on throughout the whole process become better estimates to allow us to understand what is then left over for capital projects and allow us not only to recommend capital projects but identify funding sources. What the override committee had done was made a presentation to the Board of Selectmen, recommended that the Board of Selectmen what I'm looking for, adhere to all the recommendations in that report. And the Board of Selectmen, I think it was a unanimous vote,
Unanimously.
went ahead and essentially what it came down to, what the recommendations were, was one and two, dissolving the ambulance account, making that now into the levy, allow for operating, use that money as part of the operating budget. Motor vehicle, same thing. A huge one was that trying to limit town budgets to no more than 2.5% increases, other than those that are fixed costs.
It was actually, the selectmen vote was to limit the town budget to a 2.5%, and then the school budget to 5%.
As a whole.
As a whole.
as a whole.
So the town departments, and in the Article 2s I'm seeing now, I don't know if that's completely come across, each department has to also account that we're going to have growth in retirement, in insurance, and restrict that. So it's great that every department's restricted to about 2.5%, but that doesn't leave us a lot of breathing room for the fixed costs that are going to go up no matter what.
And then the school one's a big one as well. I don't know if do you want to speak on that?
The school one, it was a similar, what was it? Yeah, request from the board to restrict school growth to 5%. That will include all of the schools. It'll include Votech, Whitman Hanson, and Norfolk Aggie, which we have no control over the cost of, but that factors into our 5%. It'll include non-mandated busing. So everything under that school umbrella, the growth has to be restricted to the 5%. Yesterday's assessment, recommended. Yeah. The FinCom will have final say over what gets recommended to town meeting, but the Board of Selectmen's policy, or I guess guideline, was to hold to those numbers.
So I think what's going to happen now is that once this all plays out this year, we're going to see an influx of one-time money, which will drop down to free cash. So this year, I think we're going to see an increase in free cash that we haven't seen in the past, and we won't see in the future. It'll be a one-time influx, but the following year, I think what we'll see is that we'll be able to better identify what that free cash is going to be, something that we couldn't do before. So I think that's a huge benefit not only to the Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, but also to this committee, because we've committed to not only reviewing capital projects, but also the funding sources in what made sense in terms of those projects.
What did the Collins report target for growth? Was that the guideline that the selectmen used?
No,
For
the recommendations.
growth?
The recommendations that were put forth to the Board of Selectmen was the Madden report. I'm not sure if the Collins report
Collins report just recommended we get up to about 4% of our total budget dedicated to capital.
Right.
Which, if you include the debt that Frank outlined in his sheet here, I think we're pretty close. So the debt payments, all of the new articles. Now, this year includes a middle school feasibility study at $750,000, so that bumps us up a little bit. But
If you want, we can do something every year for that.
Essentially just eliminate your funding restrictions to be able to use that money for other stuff versus specific needs.
Yeah.
some of those changes will affect the way this board ranks things. I think at some point we're going to have to re-rank stuff in the Collins recommendations to reflect that the ambulance account is not dedicated to fire department projects and the motor vehicle fine account's not dedicated to police department projects anymore. That the funding source had been a pretty high ranking factor in weighing different capital projects for obvious reasons. If we get a grant, we want to move forward with something.
And one other thing that the override committee, but what they didn't recommend is that, I'm going to lose my train of thought here, is that a method for, some type of method to allow for a chunk of monies to be allocated similar to like an Article 2 line item every year toward capital projects. Capital projects typically get funded through free cash, but is there a way to allow for a set number, that 4%, to be part of our budget where it's it can be amended and it can be changed on by town meeting, but allow for that as a consistent funding. So one year you have $1 million, next year you have $1.2 million. In this year, what was the free cash number?
High.
This year he's I thought that number was here somewhere.
Question is, can you raise and appropriate to a capital stabilization account?
Right. So those are the
do.
questions that are going on now, and Frank's been he's been dealing with that, and so that we'll have to bring up in the next meeting, and I'll remind Frank before our next meeting to see if he's come across anything.
1.9.
Yeah. So this year it's 1.9. I think historically we've been just plus minus $1 million of free cash. All right. So that's that. So also in your packet, what you have is two Division of Local Services, Department of Revenue packets. One's called the Capital Improvement Planning Guide, and the other is the Form and Instructions. I read these twice now. Really interesting stuff. Basically, what we have now as part of this capital committee is that was approved during town meeting 2015 is in here. Some of the language that's in here that authorized this committee. But what I'd like everyone to do is to read this, and we'll discuss it further during our next meeting. What I'd like to pass around, what you don't have, is the town of Bridgewater. I printed off their capital improvement program 2019-2025. Very interesting on how they approach things. They ask, and it's very close to the outline of what the state recommends that towns do. Provides definitions of where the money is coming from, amounts, and where it's from. But it provides, and if I can find it real quick, it asks every department to have a capital plan matrix. And I think this is it here. So, this shows police and fire. So it has a 2019 through 2025 matrix in which the police, fire have put together their plan for, their what they anticipate their requests are. This is generally around capital improvements to the building, vehicles, a fire station, again, more repairs, ambulances, fire engines. I'll pass this around. I'll just I'll put this in.
Online?
It's online, yeah. If you just Google Bridgewater Capital Improvement Program. So going back to what the state recommends is that that the capital committee have this type of document prepared before town meeting. I don't see this. I don't see us getting there for this year. But what I'd like to do is set a goal for absolutely for next year, and they're saying months prior to town meeting. So what that requires is that every department has their matrix of capital needs, and it's out 5 years. So every year, you're just the department heads are then taking on and off capital need projects. So once this gets developed, it's fairly routine. And what it allows for is, again, like there's no, barring any immediate needs through emergencies or whatever, it takes the guessing game out of the equation. And I think I'll send an email. I'll get this document on PDF form and just email it out to everyone. But I think we could probably follow their
Use it as a
template. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on this. I just threw these at you today, but I do encourage everybody to read these because I would like to discuss these during the next meeting, and hopefully we can
5 years, yeah, different
come up with a
departments.
game plan on trying to get a capital improvement program ready for town meeting of 2021. So that's that. Another issue that has affected the budget is the Whitman Hanson Regional School District. I don't know if everyone's been following that issue. Do you want to speak in regards to the assessment issue and how that how that affects the Whitman budget?
Sure. Basically, in determining the assessment, there are two ways to do an assessment. One is by agreement method, and the other way is by statutory method, which is the method that's laid out within the statute. Unbeknown to our committee, we were supposed to be voting on this annually and sending over the recommendation, and the town was supposed to be voting to accept the agreement method that they've been voting on. There is a caveat in there that says that by an affirmative vote of the budget, you are approving the method. So technically it was legal, but morally, I don't know that it really was. That all came to light, and what we decided after negotiations with the two boards of selectmen, Hanson asked, well, what are you going to do this year? And they asked for our committee, for the school committee, to vote it. I motion that we use the statutory method, which ultimately takes your Chapter 70 funding and it allocates it to your town. So the amount of revenue that you're receiving you're able to utilize all your revenue, where before you were sharing your revenue with the agreement method. That means about a $1.3 million swing in our budget this year,
In our favor.
in our favor.
Right.
Okay? There may be times in the future that it won't be in our favor. You know, depends on what they consider wealth, et cetera. If you look up the municipal growth rates of Whitman and Hanson, Hanson's a smaller town, has far less pupils, but yet their growth in dollars is about $60,000 more for FY #21 than Whitman's is. So they're taking in more cash. So when they say, oh, we don't have the money, we're not wealthy, it's not true. They are a wealthier community. The DOR publishes the numbers and the formulas, and I won't kid you, God, you're a mathematician and then some to be able to figure it all out. But once they publish what their wealth is and what their ability to pay is and what they should be paying, that's how we come out with our numbers. So it's about a 1-2-1-3 swing. We came out with a budget last night, or I should say the frameworks of a budget, because we haven't voted on anything. It's not, anywhere stated it's a final budget, and there's a lot more work that still needs to be done on it. But from the original numbers, if the district was to provide level services, Whitman would see an increase of $600 and some odd thousand, and Hanson would see an increase of about $2.2 million and change. So they're going to see a very hefty increase, so to speak. But that's the way the numbers break out. It does give Whitman relief on the budget, and quite frankly, if the statutory numbers remain similar next year, it's the same thing next year. It's not something that's going to change all that much year to year unless the demographics change, so to speak.
The relief is this year. It does seem like going forward.
Well, you would have the same statutory method next year.
You would be assessed the same way, but we're not going to get a $1.2 million relief.
No, but you're going to
You
get.
just won't pay the 1.2 million.
We'll be growing at
We'll be growing at a far lower,
55% instead of
pace
60. Yeah.
than what we were growing at before.
Yeah.
In what we were absorbing, so to speak.
Okay.
So,
On that issue, the biggest, because I discussed that with somebody today that lives in Hanson, saying that, they don't have any industry or anything like that. We have Route 18. And, why are they considered a wealthy? I said, well, it's the state's formula, so it's their way of doing it. Their taxes, they do a factor of one, just like we do a factor of one. Your household and your business is basically the same tax rate. So I'm making the assumption that their homes are assessed at a higher price than ours is.
their overall value,
Yeah.
perhaps.
We have more
plus-
renters.
Or what?
We have more
It's
renters.
got to do with
One of
apartments.
the bigger ones.
Yeah.
It's got everything to do
Yeah,
with
it's all the apartments.
rental-
Right, yeah.
rental properties and all that.
Right. I mean, there's so many factors in it.
Well, you also have your income factor.
Right,
There's
that's
a
the main
DOR
thing.
income factor
That's the main thing, I think.
as well. They go by.
Multifamilies over there don't exist.
I'm sorry?
They don't have multifamilies over there.
Yeah.
It's a big difference.
But what's the value of that single family compared to a two-family here? It's not all that.
Well, multifamily isn't two. We're talking 6 families, 4 families. And there's a lot of probably lower income properties there.
The one thing that I wish we could get people to understand, it's not that we want to take money from them. It's that we want to stop sharing revenue with them. That's what the statutory method does.
Being credited for what we had,
We're just utilizing the money that the state's allocated toward us. That's all. I don't know if there's anything else other than that you want me to get into.
Yeah, is it ironed out? Is it agreed upon?
No. What's happened is...
I didn't think so.
What's happened is we are utilizing statutory that has been voted by the school committee. So that's the assessment that the town of Whitman will receive. Now, what would probably happen, and God knows to be a mind reader, is it probably goes to the Hanson town meeting and gets rejected. the budget gets rejected. It comes back to the school committee. The school committee puts the budget back to the both towns. Now it gets rejected again in Hanson, say. Now it goes to a district-wide town meeting, and from that point on, the only method you can use is statutory. So whatever way they want to say, and let's just say for a second, for argument's sake, the school committee voted the agreement method. Okay, and now it gets to town hall floor here. I would be under the assumption that the FinCom would get up, or someone from the Board of Selectmen, or a concerned citizen would get up and say, understand there are two methods of assessment. If you reject the agreement method of the assessment, it goes back to the school committee, like I just outlined once and twice, and then from there on, it's only the statutory method that can be used. I would go under the assumption that you would find town meeting to reject it here if you weren't using statutory. So any road you take is going to end up being the statutory method.
I have a question. Fred. If I'm not mistaken, when you finally come up with the budget, what you're going to vote on,
Yep.
after the superintendent makes his pros and cons, what he wants to add, what he wants to deplete, so whatever. When you're all said and done and you've got a number, 10 members of the board, what do you need for a vote to
7.
pass that?
You need 2/3.
7. So and if it's strictly on the statutory method, the process that he puts the budget together, you're not going to get that, are you?
I don't know. I would hope that there would be 7 members that agree with the overall budget, and they wouldn't be looking at the method. They would be looking at what the budget is. That would be my hope. Because if you don't have a budget to put forward, I believe you end up under state control that much quicker, and that doesn't look good for us either.
Because that's the thing that I'm looking at, is the fact that if, in fact, you don't have 7 members of your board that approve the budget, the numbers, right? And, of course, the method goes along with it. That's part of the numbers. I don't know if I don't know if I can see that happening. I'll just,
And I would hope that our counterparts from Hanson would see fit, and I would hope that our, Whitman folks as well, that we're voting on a budget number and we're voting a budget. We already voted the method.
right.
And now it's just up to voting the budget.
Well, you never know. You may have one Mitt Romney there.
Okay, so
Look, can I just say one thing? So just for clarity, the agreed upon method was basically the percentage of ratio of students
Correct.
from each school, right? And that was from the conception of the school, from the.
Well, okay, and to really mess things up, back when we originally regionalized,
Right.
that's the way the agreement was written.
Okay.
When ed reform took effect in 1993, it took away that agreement method
Okay.
and disallowed it 100%. The only way you could do a budget was statutory.
With
After-
a regional. With a regional.
With the regional, okay? After
94.
Five, I think.
95.
95 or 97?
Well, 94. No,
6 or 7.
94 is when it come in. 95, the budget
It
year
was
of
a few
95.
years later.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll say it that way, that you did have some regions say, hey, wait a second, this is the way
Oh,
we've
yeah.
been doing it,
Right, yeah.
by, our agreement, and they came up with, you can use an alternative method. Now,
Providing you both agree.
Okay, well, providing that all member towns agree unanimously. Now, we're a 2-member town.
Right.
There are some districts, such as South Shore Votek is 8. So the burden for that would be 8 towns agreeing to do the agreement method, whereas the statutory method is 2/3.
Is South Shore
Or no,
Votek-
majority. Majority.
Is South Shore Votek the statutory? method?
Absolutely, have been since 1995.
Okay, and so,
Hanson's been paying it based upon statutory with South Shore Votek every year for so many years, since 95.
and we just never caught it between us and Hanson.
Correct. I myself never knew there was more than one way to figure out a budget.
Okay.
And our business manager never informed us of those facts.
That was the issue.
But has anybody gone back and just seen what the delta of cash would have been?
It's over,
I know we're not going to get it,
Well,
but
$3-4 million over the past 4 years.
it's leverage to talk about.
$3 to $4 million over the past 4 years.
In our benefit or?
No, cost us. That was in their benefit.
In their benefit, okay.
In other words, we just lost your new
So
DPW.
just this year is in our benefit. All the previous years was in theirs.
No. In other
No, it's
words,
always been in ours.
No, it's always been in ours.
Oh, always.
So it cost us
Okay,
between $3 and $4 million over the past 4 years.
okay.
That's just 4 years, not talking from 1995 on. It's up and down. It's the state formula, and the state makes that decision by a number of
In
calculations.
'07, they tweaked the formula. And that's when it started
when
becoming
it
more
really ballooned,
predominant.
yeah.
Back 4 years ago, when it was first spoken about, I think the guesstimate, and I can only say guesstimate that I heard, it was a couple of $100,000 at that point.
Okay.
But it's
Well, thanks for
obviously
clarifying it.
accelerated.
Sorry, I didn't mean that conversation to go in that direction. My intent
Sorry.
was just to have it, how, right now, what the school committee, not voting in budget, method and budget, how that affects the,
Okay, I'm sorry.
no, that's quite all right. I enjoy hearing that history of that over and over. I wasn't being facetious. So while I have you, you did want to speak on the school committee's capital matrix?
Well, and I just want to pass it out because we had said, or I made the statement last time, that they would be prioritizing items prior. People can take this home for their own edification. The one thing that I did note immediately, and I did speak with Frank, is the Duval rear parking lot asphalt reimbursement. That was something that the selectmen never approved, that Frank never gave a go-ahead on as an emergency repair. I believe there was a warrant article last spring that got taken off the warrant because they knew that, the funding wasn't there. So they went ahead and did the project anyways, and now they're looking for reimbursement.
Do you know how much?
$20,000.
So it costs, well, we're paying 60% of that.
No. That's
Oh, that's all, that's right, it's all
us.
ours, right, that's right. It's our school.
That's all us, so.
20,000?
Another change I noticed is the feasibility study. Numbers have kind of been thrown around.
And I don't know where that came from.
Definitely have done that.
Well,
And
numbers
it's up
been,
to $1 million. It was
Yeah.
$750 not too long ago when we were talking with the state and whatnot.
yeah, but I think Jeff at this committee
Not that big of an area, right?
did provide that range at 1.750 to $1 million.
Okay,
So they're just going on the high end.
I know we have $750 down in our
I'd rather give the money to our guys.
plans.
Oh, true.
In our matrix anyways for this committee.
Okay.
But perhaps that's something we have to discuss if we need to raise it or if we're sticking tight with that 750 if we feel that can be accomplished. The chairlift reimbursement, that was an emergency. We have to be able to have that chairlift there. The roof repairs, those are temporary repairs to keep roof leaks down. I will say, and we heard about the Duval roof clawback. This committee heard about that, the 27 years. Next Tuesday morning, we do have Representative Sullivan meeting with Jeff. Frank is going to do his best. He had a prior commitment, but we had to be at their disposal. And hopefully Senator Brady is going to be joining that discussion to see if there's anything from a state level that they can do to either an earmark to pay for this or some sort of relief that they can come up with about the clawback. So hopefully that'll happen.
When is that meeting taking place?
Next Tuesday morning.
So it's around the corner.
Man,
Okay. When you look at this matrix and when you took a look at that page that I highlighted, that I had opened up at the Bridgewater capital improvement program, it's very similar. So what I would anticipate every department to do is to do a similar matrix to this, including IT issues, because IT is a pretty significant cost.
And this is the way we used to do ours. We used to have at the end by the year, when we felt the replacement would need to occur.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that the fields are blank now. There's no
Yeah,
marks on them.
That's the first time I've seen that.
Now, I'm wondering if it'd be advantageous also to have a date requested so we know exactly when the actual request was actually submitted forward too. Because I mean, I think there's, obviously looking at this list, there was additional
Been on there
items.
for 10 years.
No, I know, but it would be nice to at least be able to see that date. So you'd say, well, this has been in the pipeline for 10 years.
Yep.
Versus now, I don't know when it was added.
That was something that was mentioned at least 2 years ago. Hopefully that'll someday get accomplished.
But yeah, I agree. Having a template would certainly.
The only thing, and I don't know how it affects this committee, curriculum can be considered a capital item. It has a 5-year span and, a relatively higher cost. Some districts will put curriculum as a capital need. That was one thing I said about our operating budget, maybe take that and remove it, because it is a one-time expense, not a recurring expense, should it really be in an operating budget. I don't know how that would affect this committee, however.
They purchase.
Okay.
The technology department did prepare something like this for the
We actually put
Collins
that
report.
for the Collins
as a
report,
capital
correct?
item. in
Right,
Excel.
right. So I'm anticipating that some of the legwork has already been done, and that, it's not the intent of this committee to make department heads' work more cumbersome or burdensome. But I think, once we, I think the Collins report, allowed them to maybe jump that first hurdle, and then maybe, hopefully this committee can then take it, all the way to allow for this to be a routine, non-time consuming effort on department heads.
Yeah, and I think we had this conversation probably last year too, is that doing it the way we should be doing it based on best practice allows us to obviously see what's out there and what needs to be replaced versus I think what we've been doing or what's been happening over the last 5 years is that we've been needing stuff to get replaced, or needing to replace stuff rather, and it never was requested, and now all of a sudden we need $50,000 or $300,000 worth of stuff. Meanwhile, it was never evaluated as an asset, that needed to be dealt with, and now all of a sudden we have no money because now we're looking for $500,000, and it's just, I think obviously better to prepare and plan for this. And some of the newer assets that we're actually getting, new vehicles, whatever it might be, we need to start keeping track of this now to know that now 10 years from now or 5 years from now we have to start looking to replace this. For example, like we just obviously replaced a lot of the radio communication equipment with the grant we received for $200,000. Well, we now need to know that 5 or 7 years from now we need to obviously start looking to replace some of that stuff over time versus 10 years and then find out that, oh yeah, by the way, we need
Sure, right.
$200,000 now to replace equipment. So.
Mr. Chair? Yep. Throw an idea. If we could come up with column headers of what we want to see on a matrix so that it can be distributed to every department so that it's uniform.
Yep, absolutely.
Schools included.
Absolutely.
So that way that every department's going to have the same matrix.
Yep, absolutely.
And, your idea, which I think is fantastic, is also a separate matrix that lists inventory and expected life expectancy. Would be a fantastic asset to have. So you could look at something and say, okay, this was purchased here. It's expected to last 10 years.
Right.
Like the smoke detectors in the high school. How we do this every single year. They
Yep.
go on to the matrix, they're a priority, they're past their life cycle, and then you call the fire chief, and the fire chief says, no, they work fine.
Yeah, but I mean, best practice in the household, a regular house, is 10 years. So, I mean, you know, and obviously these places, these buildings are a lot larger. There's a lot more people in there. So, you know, they do work, but obviously it's a safety concern at some point.
My understanding from speaking with him over the years, if they're working fine and they're communicating, that there's no reason to replace them. But do you turn around and say, okay, maybe we should have an inventory and start, you know, slowly
Cycling them out.
swapping them,
Absolutely.
you know, et cetera. You know, so even if they are working, you know, you're getting ahead of the curve,
Yep.
and you want to just make sure that you're working with the proper fire panel too.
Which is why the carbon monoxide alarms are restricted to 10 years, and they will automatically start sounding, so you have to replace them, because there's obviously a reason why they do that, versus having them for 15, 20 years, and maybe the sensing is not all that good, and you have a problem. So,
I mean, my whole concern was, are we properly safe? You know, you have a piece of safety equipment, and you have your kids in the building. And the fire chief had assured, no, you are perfectly safe.
yeah, it looks like Bridgewater is using Microsoft Access to keep track of from what I can tell on the document that was presented.
And Fred, you're right, because essentially this document will be presented from this committee to the Board of Selectmen and approved, and then presented as a document to town meeting. So we need to have it in a real clear, concise way to allow for the public to understand the information.
And I'm assuming that the selectmen are going to want a report for the town book, the annual report in the town book, and that could be something that could go right in there as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Let's do next week.
Next.
Whitman. Okay. Any other discussion on that? Before I forget, any comments from the gallery? Any?
I just have a question, I guess probably to Dan. The selectmen open up the warrant at the next board of selectmen meeting.
Tuesday, yes.
How long is that open?
It's till the end of the month.
Yeah,
I
at
think.
the end of the month.
The end of the month. So technically, this committee has till the end of the month to get all these capital articles in order.
Prioritize.
Correct.
Right. But I mean, if an emergency comes, we can open it for an item. We don't like to do that, but we can open it for a last-minute item, open it, enter it, and then close it. Same
So
within.
basically, this committee has 3 weeks to go through
Yeah.
this list and figure out everything that it wants to
Or
put on an article.
Frank would put on placeholders,
Right,
perhaps.
Frank will put placeholders.
Yeah, based on,
Frank's
I think, the document that Frank submitted, I think, tonight.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. It looks like he's got placeholders already for the majority of it. Based on, I think, the report, the Madden report also highlighted some of these
Right.
based on the department head's recommendations.
Right.
Yeah, the Collins Center talked to every department head when they came in here. So we should have had a good idea of what was
Yeah.
coming in 2021.
So if it's the intent of this committee to be able to make recommendations of the warrants in the warrant article, then, I mean, we can, a warrant can be, an article can be issued and on the warrant article, and we can still have discussions after the fact, all the way up until town meeting.
Right.
So we
You
haven't,
can't change the article
No,
once.
but we cannot recommend it.
No.
right.
Correct.
So there's a deadline of printing of the warrant articles where we would need to make our recommendation of in favor or not in favor. So that goes all the way up until a couple weeks before town meeting. So we have up until that time to make our recommendations.
And then anything after that
So
would have to be.
and that's when, right, so that's, you know, the warrant time frame will close, and the warrants are set. However, we have up until the printing of the warrant in order to make our recommendation.
Actually, tell me.
Yes, but don't you have to have the dollar amounts on the warrant?
No, not necessarily. You could do an amendment at town meeting to amend any lines.
It'll just say sum of money.
Right, sum of money. But we can, but I mean, we can either recommend, like, if we put an article on, say, a new crew, let's say, well, last year, the town wanted, the DPW wanted a couple of trucks. Well, we can only afford 2 out of the 3 that they wanted. So they had to make a choice of which one they were gonna let go, and I think it's gonna probably be on this year's warrant. So, I mean, we made a motion to pass over one particular type of vehicle on town hall floor because we didn't have the money. It's that simple.
So I anticipate this committee being able to have our recommendations available. I don't anticipate having a capital improvement program available for this year.
Right. And I'm sure department heads will come in with their capital needs, and we can, and we'll know what they are too.
Well, based on Frank's list here, just looking real quick, you have the school district, public safety.
Right.
The library, a few others. So, we're not going to ask every department head to come in, and we may not even, based on the information that we're getting, we may not need department heads. But, so
Right.
I would anticipate some department heads probably coming in for clarification. Right. Any other questions, Sean? No. All right. So if we can, that's the end of my chairman's report. A lot of information, but I do please ask you to read those capital improvement planning guide and the forms and instruction in the manual for our next meeting, because I think we have 2 paths to go down: being prepared for this town meeting, and then being prepared for next town meeting. And what you'll see in this, what the state recommends is being prepared months in advance of town meeting. So if May of 2021, say we want to have something presented to the Board of Selectmen 3 months prior to that, we're talking, I can't do it backwards, February 2021. So then that gives us from now about a year, about 12 months, to ask department heads to do more work, and for us to generate that document.
Yeah.
That's not, it's probably just enough time to
Should we
get
be
that done.
prepared in the event of the possibility of a fall town meeting special?
Prepared in what way?
For any capital items that might come up for the fall?
That would be in lieu of stuff happening this May.
Right.
More than anything coming up before next. Well,
Yeah, I mean, you find that your free
Yeah.
cash positions are much greater?
yeah.
Yeah.
Why not?
We're gonna be looking for feasibility study money for the DPW building.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
This May, and maybe we'll get something together for a fall town meeting.
right. It may be enough so that we may have the fall town meeting and maybe ask for a debt exclusion for the new possible DPW. Whatever. I mean,
Well, that's a whole nother question,
Yeah.
the funding source.
did you want a motion for the minutes? No.
That was next. Yeah. So if everyone just take 3 minutes or a few minutes just to go through those minutes, the meeting minutes of October 24th, and then I'll entertain a motion.
You guys, did we do all of them?
No, Frank pulled a few.
Because we got the September 25th, October 24th, November 21st,
We
and
already
January
voted, I
2nd.
believe.
Huh?
One of them was voted already.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
already
Do
voted.
you know which one?
September 25th, the September one.
The September 25th one was voted?
Yeah. We have October 24th.
So 24th, November 1st, and January 2nd?
And actually, September 24th, I was not a member of
November
this committee.
21st, right?
October 24th?
So it's in here, yeah.
So I'm going to abstain from that one. This was November 21st. When did we put me on here? I was also in attendance for a few of these. So I am only voting on one of them.
Like I can't vote, I won't vote on the 24th one. I'll abstain.
Okay. I read them. I'm all set.
I'm sorry, attached to this are the meeting minutes of January 2nd, 2020.
All set?
Yeah, I'll entertain a motion.
All right, you want all three or one at a time?
One at a time after.
One at a time.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes of October 24th, 2019.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? One abstention.
Two abstentions.
Two abstentions, Justin and Fred.
I got
for the
to
record.
abstain, I wasn't here.
And Josh. 3 abstentions.
That being said, I entertain a motion to accept the minute meetings of November 21st, 2019.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Abstaining is Josh.
Oh, and me. And Fred.
No, I'm not abstaining.
You voted?
This is for the October.
This is for November.
November 21.
I was, yeah.
So let's do it again, make sure we get them.
The motion on the floor was to approve the meeting minutes of October 21st, November 21st
November 21st.
of 2019. All in favor?
Aye.
Is that better?
And then I abstained.
One abstention, Justin.
Next one?
Entertaining the motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 2nd.
So
2000.
moved?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Next meeting? Do people feel that once a month is sufficient? I'll just leave it there, you know.
As we get closer to town meeting, we may need more, but
Yeah.
Okay.
at the beginning of next month, we should have all the warrant articles. Warrant will be closed.
When is it closed?
The end of the month is what Frank said earlier.
Yeah.
End of February.
Yep.
End of February. So do you want to meet once at the end of February?
Well, I might as well just jump over to the beginning of March.
Yeah.
Would the first week of March work?
I will be in Myrtle Beach.
Myrtle Beach?
Yeah.
Every year.
Every year.
Yeah.
You can do a remote meeting, right?
First meeting I'll miss. You can do it without me.
Last year you didn't golf. Did you?
What, the second week in March?
I'm leaving, well, I'm driving, so we're teeing off on the 6th. So I'll be leaving the 5th, and our last round of golf is the 11th, so I won't be home till the 12th.
12th is Thursday.
Yeah, so,
Dan, wasn't the weather so bad last year? You didn't, was it bad?
no, a couple years ago I got sick down there.
Oh, you got sick?
I mean, next time I'm going to be
we do the 5th
available
or the
is
12th,
after
or-
the,
The 12th? Does the 12th work for everyone?
I may be home in time, I'm not too sure.
We're trying our best to include you.
Yeah, whatever.
12th works.
What time? 5:30 or?
So March 12th, 5:45? 3, 12, 20, 5:45. All right, I'll entertain a motion to
Adjourn?
Adjourn, thank
So
you.
moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Is anyone in charge of Frank's recorder?
Yes, I'm going to drop back at his office.
So the Madden report in the